What is going on, everybody, and welcome to the Monday edition of the Stochastic NHL Strategy Show. I'm your host, Josh Harris. Busy week in the NHL. They saved one of the busiest weeks of the year for a week where there's college basketball, there's MLB in full swing, there's NBA. Classic Gary Bettman. We could have used this slate or this week a couple weeks ago, but here we are. This is a very interesting 8-game slate. We obviously are going to talk about it. There is some serious firepower on this slate. But joining me, as always, some Cliffy. How was your weekend?
Can't complain. Nice, quiet Easter weekend. It's kind of mad. There was only one game yesterday. Like, speaking of the schedule, it's the weekend where everybody's going to be home for a holiday. You know, there's no football. You're not up against NFL or anything. Of course, you're up against baseball, but you had like a 15-game slate on Thursday against opening day. So why wouldn't you have more than one game on the Sunday of Easter weekend? But I digress. Yeah, this is a very interesting slate ahead of us here tonight. Colorado is going to be the first team that we talk about. Colorado is going to be carrying a lot of ownership tonight as they head into Columbus. And considering we have Austin Matthews on the slate, we have Connor McDavid going into St. Louis, we have Tampa Bay on the slate. There's a lot of, the Rangers, that Rangers team at home against Pittsburgh. There are a lot of excellent offensive players, and Colorado is going to be the one carrying a lot of the ownership. So it's going to be an interesting slate to kind of navigate as far as ownership and lineup construction and those things go. So kind of excited to break it down because it's one of those slates where if you don't play Colorado, you can basically go just about anywhere that you want and not have ownership concerns. So I kind of like those slates because it leaves your options open, but maybe it doesn't. Maybe you just want to jam Colorado in. We'll talk about that.
We will. And quick party pumping out the April schedule in the chat. That just all I see is me and you going to be talking a lot of hockey this month.
Yeah.
Why can't like this happen in like November when we're actually like, yeah, man, the season. Now we're just like, why is this still going? Like the playoffs should be starting this weekend, not in 3 weeks.
I'm fine if they want to play 82 games. They got to figure out a way to not make the season 6.5 months long. Like it's honestly, especially like in a year with no COVID, there's no COVID pauses. There's no Olympics. There's like no reason to extend the schedule that far. Anyways, we'll talk about the schedule sometime in the off season. Maybe we'll bring it up with Gary when we have our meeting with the NHL Board of Governors or something.
Yeah. We'll be there. 162 games for MLB. Their season is a couple days shorter than the NHL season, just for perspective. It's insane. Yeah. Let's get into this slate because this first game is an absolute scene. Like, it is a pivotal game for this slate. It's just insane, the ownership on Colorado, and we're going to talk about it right now. Colorado Avs with a 4.1 total. Heading into Columbus, the Blue Jackets have a 2.5 total. This is an 8-game slate. It's an 8-game slate. It's not a 4-game slate. It's 8 games. There's McDavid. There's Crosby. There's Matthews. There's Panarin. There's Kucherov. There's Barkov. Okay, just let that marinate in your melons for a few seconds. Colorado won 22,400, 45.7% top 2 stack percentage, 32.8% projected ownership. Like, it's insane. We have McKinnon projected over 40%, and he'll be higher than that in single entry contest. Like, he'll push 60% in some single entry contests for sure. It's insane. It's an unbelievable matchup. But like, there is so much firepower on this slate. It's just insane. The top 2 stack percentage, the ownership, and I get it. You're trying to figure out reasons to fade them. And outside of ownership, there really isn't a reason. We thought maybe the home road splits. No, they score more on the road. Jenner's out. Yeah, we like Voronkov, but like, it's Columbus. The penalty kill sucks. McKinnon's matchup proof. I never thought I'd be talking about a Jonathan Drouin line in 2024 at 33% on a 8-game slate, but like we're here, and this is. I'm a single injury player. You're a single injury player. We have a bunch in the chat. This is a problem tonight. This line, because you fade them, you could be dead by 7:30. You play them, and they don't do anything. You're dead by 8:30. You play them, they go off. You and half the field are now competing for the rest. You know what I mean? So like it's an interesting dilemma. It's easily the best matchup on the night, though. And I think something important that you should do is you bring Drouin along for the ride, because I think you're going to see a lot of McKinnon Rantanen, and then you're going to see another stack, and you're going to see a one-off. You're going to see a 3-2-1 build with McKinnon Rantanen as the two. I think you bring Drouin along for the ride, or you bring Casey Middlestat along for the ride. Like you have to. I think you have to full stack Colorado one here. I think you're doing yourself a disservice by just going McKinnon Rantanen, or even just McKinnon. You know what I mean? Like one-offing McKinnon is probably going to be the most popular play on the slate, and it's not even close. So I think what you do with Colorado one is you full stack Colorado one, or you full stack, you add in Middlestat. You do something to get a little bit different. I think full stack in Colorado one is enough to get different on the slate, as long as you just don't stick him in with like a Seattle line. You know what I mean? Even then, you can get different with your defensemen and goalies or whatever. But Colorado one, there's nothing to say really. So you either play him with a bunch of your friends, or you fade him and you risk spending family time with your family by the end of the first period of that game. So I don't know what else you could say. On the Columbus side, they're actually getting a lot of ownership, and I think it's price-driven because Jenner's out. Top line's Voronkov, Gaudreau, Nylander, and they're going to get that McKinnon matchup, and that's just brutal. Now, Colorado does take a bunch of penalties, and they are only 12-7, but they have a 2.6% top two stack and 7.6% ownership. Marchenko, Sillinger, Texier, 9,900, 1.2% top two stack, 9% ownership. Like, I'm going to go find cheap lines elsewhere. I think. Like, I don't want to play Columbus at that ownership on an 8-game slate. Colorado, completely different story, because that line, we've seen it. Like, we've talked about it at times. We're like, oh, we could fade this line because they're going to need at least 85 DK points, and they just explode with 120, and you're screwed. But like Columbus at almost double digits, I think I'll pass. I think if they get into your MME, I think that's fine. But in single entry, I'm out on Columbus. And the big question is Colorado one. Like, it's the question of the slate.
Yeah. I always worry about these kinds of slates, because you're right. Like, if you fade Colorado, game starts at 7:00 Eastern. By 8:00 Eastern, like you might be able to just turn off the games, because McKinnon has a three points and 5 shots by then. Mikko Rantanen has 2 goals, and you're toast. Yeah. I had been, because we all know how well McKinnon's been producing at home. He had that 30+ game point streak at home this season. I was looking to see if they were scoring less on the road, and him and Rantanen actually have a higher 5-on-5 goal rate on the road than they do at home. And it's not just pure luck either. They have a higher expected goals rate as well. So like, they're generating better quality on the road. I'm leaning towards playing them. I haven't made a firm decision yet. It's not like you would look for reasons to not play them. One of the reasons is like, maybe as they are, cruising through the last couple weeks of the season, they start backing up on ice time. That's not really been the case. McKinnon played 23 minutes in his last game, almost 28 minutes the game before that, 24 and a half before that, and almost 25 before that. In fact, the last time he played under 20 minutes was against this very same Columbus team when Colorado beat them 6-1. So it's like, oh man, the decisions you have to make. There is no real reason to fade them, other than you're hoping this is one of the times where, maybe they get McKinnon has 1 goal and 4 shots. Maybe Rantanen has a couple of assists and 3 shots. Drouin has an assist and a shot, and it's fine, but it's nowhere near enough to win a GPP. other than that, there's no reason not to play them. Like the matchup is fine against Columbus one. The top line with Jenner there was at 3.4 expected goals against per 60 minutes. I like Voronkov a lot, but I think his value is more offensive than it is defensive. I think at best he can replace what Jenner did. At worst, he's a step down. So it's not like there's a 5-on-5 matchup to worry about. The only thing you can really look at is Columbus isn't taking a ton of penalties and Colorado isn't drawing a ton of power plays. Columbus at 3 minor penalties taken per game over the last 6 weeks. Colorado at about 3 minor penalties drawn per game over the last 6 weeks. Those numbers are both below average. So good for Columbus, bad for Colorado. But at the same time, like it's not like this is a situation where Columbus can't get there, Colorado can't get there on 2 power plays, right? Like that is something that could very easily happen in this game. They can go 1 for 2, they could go 2 for 2. I was looking at that game that they played a few weeks ago where Columbus won 6-1, or Colorado won. I keep mixing up Colorado and Columbus. Like
I still do with the Flyers and Florida. I've been doing it all season.
It's I wish I was better at that, but Colorado did a lot of damage at 5-on-5, but they also got there on the power play on just 3 power plays. Like that's kind of the issue, is that they don't need 5 power plays to get a goal. They can go 1 for 2 and then get a couple 5-on-5 goals, maybe an empty netter, and all of a sudden like they're cruising. So I'm leaning towards playing them. I haven't made a firm decision. I think I agree with you. At the very least, you bring along Drouin. If not, just turn it into a 4-man power play stack, right? Just add Casey Middlestat, who took over the top power play role from Arturi Lehkonen in their last game. All of a sudden, you have a double center build that I don't think will be super popular. Like, Middlestat's still going to draw ownership because he's cheap and he's on the top power play unit, but I don't think it'll be super popular to have them both. And then if you want to add Makar, you can. I don't think you have to, but I do think that just full-on power play stacking them would be one of the avenues I would take here, and not just put in McKinnon and Rantanen, like you said, because I think that's just a little bit too obvious. So I really do like Colorado 1. Obviously, if you want to dip down to Colorado 2, I think that's fine. Lehkonen, Middlestat, Brandon Duhaime. I'm not worried about the second and third line matchups from the Columbus side either. But it's one of those situations where if I'm playing Colorado tonight, I'm probably just going to play the top guys. I'm not going to be digging into the second and third lines for some depth. You want a one-off like Ross Colton, or you want a one-off Lehkonen or something like that. I think that's okay. I just don't know about full stacking. If I'm full stacking, it's top line / top power play. On the Columbus side, it kind of sucks because, like I said, I do like Voronkov. I think he's shown himself to be a very good kind of like net front type player, which I think is somewhat similar to what Boone Jenner can do. So like imagine Boone Jenner, but when he was healthy. It's just not a very good matchup for it. And there is like too much ownership coming in on them, as you mentioned. 12,700, 7.6% ownership, 2.6% top 2 stack. Like, they're still fine to play. I'm not worried about 7 or 8% ownership on an 8-game slate. I just don't think it's that great of a matchup for them. But yeah, this is a great Colorado 1 spot. It's just a matter of how you want to construct your lineup. I would probably lean towards a power play stack, but at the very least, you have to put all 3 guys from the top line in there.
How do you survive fading them, right? So say they get 75 DK points. That's a good performance. It's not otherworldly for them, right? But the thing is, you would need to find a line that does that or more, which is kind of crazy in itself. Like 75 from Colorado 1 would be pretty good. We've seen them go way higher than that. But like, even if they do only get 75, 80, you're still going to have to find a line that at least is in that ballpark to compete with that, which is crazy. If this is a slate to do it, there are teams to do it. It's just like in single entry, do you have the balls to do it? I don't know. I don't know yet. I might have the idiocy to do it. I don't know if I have the balls, but let's move on. Pittsburgh Penguins with a 2.6 total heading into Madison Square Garden. The Rangers have a 3.4 total. I don't know why I know why, but like Mika Zibanejad, Chris Kreider, Jack Roslovic are no longer the top line for the Rangers. They haven't been the top line since like American Thanksgiving. Let's be real. The line of concern for the Rangers would be Panarin, Trocheck, Lafreniere, and they're cheap for them. 18.5, 12% top two, 9.2% projected ownership. You obviously can't fit them with Colorado 1, but this is a pretty good matchup. They're going to see Malkin, Bunting, Raquel. You know, the Rangers kind of split top six. So they're going to see some Crosby. They're going to see some Malkin. Neither are a giant concern. It is the Rangers' second line that I like the best on the Rangers side. Lafreniere is coming off a huge game. He had a 5-point game and a hat trick. He's probably going to be close or above 60 points this season with no power play time. People are like, he's a productive Panarin. Oh, wow. You know, a good player playing with another good player, and they have a good season. He's looked good. 18-5. Get Trocheck and Panarin on the top power play unit. Pittsburgh penalty kill actually has been pretty decent, but they're cheaper than the Crosby line with Drew O'Connor on it, and they have positive leverage. So I think, you know, if you don't play Colorado, you don't play Edmonton, you can fit basically whoever you want together. Rangers' second line is one of those that I have circled. The Rangers' top line is okay. They're 14-8, which makes them a little bit more attractive, but they're coming in negatively leveraged, 8.1% ownership. If they were coming in around the top two stack, like 4 or 5%, I'd have more interest, but negatively leveraged line that hasn't been great at 5-on-5, I'm just going to Rangers 2 there. They've been good all season. They've been in the 21,000s at points. They're at home. They have the bigger total. I like Rangers 2. On the Pittsburgh side, there's no ownership on Pittsburgh. It is Igor net. I don't know. Like, I don't mind the Crosby line at 1% ownership. It's definitely an MME play for me. But if I was 20 maxing, having 1 at 22 at 20 coming in 10x the field there is something that I'd be interested in because, you know, Crosby, Russ, O'Connor have pretty good offensive numbers. Kreider's advantage at Roslovic don't have great defensive numbers. Rangers' expected goals against numbers aren't great. So I think Pittsburgh one's an interesting MME play, but this game is a Rangers 2 game for me. Muted.
This is a Monday. I don't mind put one here, but I agree with you on the MME call because here's the issue: is that at 18,600, you can't play them with Edmonton, you can't play them with Colorado, you can't play them with Tampa, and you can't play them with Florida. I think you might be able to squeeze them in with the Tavares line. You can certainly squeeze them in with the Matthews line if you double punt your defenseman. But that's kind of the problem is like it can happen, but you're banking on all of McKinnon, McDavid, and Kucherov and Reinhart, Barkov, or Hagee lines all falling flat on their faces to play Pitt 1. Like that's just it. Insane. Just doesn't. That's why it would be an MME play for me. It's like if that happens in a single entry, like tip of the cap, I'll just get up tomorrow and go and get back at it. It just doesn't seem super plausible, which is why I would probably just honestly prefer Pitt 2 in single entry. Because they are a secondary stack that you can use with, you know, Tampa Bay or Florida or something like that. So I think I would lean Pitt 2 in single entry, 3 max, those types of things. Pitt 1, once you get to your 20 max and above is where I would go. And, you know, Bunting and Malkin have been good together. Like they've at least created some offense, 3.2 expected goals, 3.2 actual goals per 60. Defense, not very good, but I think that's kind of expected. You know, yet the power play isn't that good, but you do get them on the power play as well. So there are reasons to play them. I don't mind Pitt 2 as a filler in basically any format, but that's the only line I would play in single entry or 3 max. Question is what to do on the Rangers side. I think I agree with you on going to Rangers 2. There's not that much ownership on them, 9%. Maybe they're coming in a bit higher in the single entry 3 maxes, like, 11, 12, 13% or something like that. That's not that big of a deal. They have been really, really good offensively all season. The expected goals numbers aren't as high lately as they were earlier in the year, but you and I always talk about how the Panarin lines are typically lines that break expected goals models anyway. So I'm not overly concerned about it. Really good matchups. Both of Pittsburgh's top lines have not been good defensively. Like, the best you can say about the Crosby line without Gensel is that they're about league average, and a league average line against that Panarin line, it's just nothing to be worried about. The only thing that I'd be worried about is, like, Pittsburgh legitimately has a good penalty kill. I worry about the upside for the Rangers if they can't get at least one on the power play, but with low ownership, a pretty, like, 18,500. This is a line that's pushed, like, I'm pretty sure 21K at times this year. So, like, this is a pretty big discount for Panarin, Trocheck, and Lafreniere. They are my favorite line in this game. I would go Rangers 2, then Rangers 1, and then Pitt 2, and then Pitt 1 for single entry and 3 max. And then, like I said, once you get to 20 max and above, that's where I get more interest in the Crosby line.
Yeah, it's just like, these are like, if we fade Colorado, I like this line. That's kind of just like the theme of this slate. New York Islanders with a 2.9 total heading into Philadelphia. The Flyers have a 3 total. Forgot my stamp, but this is our first game sucks of the night. No clue what the Islanders lines are going to be.
Well, yeah, we do.
Oh, did they say JG Pageau is playing?
Yeah, he's in.
Oh, okay. We have a clue, my friends, and it is Horvat, Lee, JG Pageau, Nelson, Palmieri, Engvall, and then Barzal, Cizikas, Fashion. Wow. That is gross, even for Patrick Waugh. That is disgusting. I guess it would be Nelson, Palmieri, Engvall at 12-6. Because you could fit them with whatever you want, and Urson kind of sucks, and the Flyers haven't been great, and the Flyers are actually free-falling. Like, they may miss the playoffs, and they were pretty comfortably third in the Metro for a while there. They're now in a wild card spot. Maybe they hang on. I don't know. It would be that Nelson, Palmieri, Engvall line. I don't really want to plug them in, but, like, with Colorado 1, if you're playing Colorado 1, there really aren't a ton of options that where you can get different. This would be one of them, I think, like 6.7% negatively leveraged, whatever, I guess. Like, you could go to Horvat, Lee, JG Pageau, but, like, these lines are just brutal, man. I at least Nelson and Palmieri and Engvall have played together a bunch this season. I don't know. Like, I'm trying to talk myself into some Islanders here because it's a decent matchup. It's not a great power play matchup, but that doesn't matter. It's just painful. On the Flyer side, like, I see Couturier is back with Konechny and Forster, but I have no faith that that's going to stick. None. Couturier has been healthy, scratched a bunch. He's been on the 4th line for like a month. I don't know if this is a goodwill thing from Torts, give you a second chance. If he has one bad shift, he could be back on the 4th line. I don't know. I think Konechny is a fine one-off. I think Tippett's a fine one-off. I just have 0.0 faith that Torts keeps these lines together.
Yeah, I think part of it is you go 2-5-1 with Couturier on the 4th line or healthy scratched. Like, kind of safe to say the problem wasn't Couturier. Like, that's why I kind of have like a little faith he's going to remain in his spot, because I think Torts might finally realize that Couturier was definitely not the problem with the team's wins and losses. I'll start on the Islander side real quick. The only line I have interest in is Nelson Palmieri and Engvall. I don't have an interest in a Bo Horvat, JG Pageau, Anders Lee line, especially where I think they're going to get that Noah Cates shutdown matchup, and that Cates Paling Hathaway line has been just a meat grinder defensively. Like, I just don't think they'll be able to create that much against the Flyers, at least at 5-on-5. Nelson Palmieri and Engvall might be stuck in that Couturier matchup, which isn't really a great one because Couturier and Forster have actually been pretty good together this season defensively when they played. But I think it is better than the Cates matchup because that Cates Hathaway Paling line has legitimately been one of the best shutdown lines in the NHL this season. I would prefer Nelson Palmieri Engvall. We've seen them have some success. You get 2 out of the 3 guys on the top power play unit. And like Philly has been taking penalties, right? 3.5 minor penalties taken per game over the last 6 weeks. That's higher than the league average. Islanders have actually been drawing power plays. Now they're not succeeding. Their power play has actually taken a little bit of a dive over the last month or so. But the Flyers penalty kill itself has not been what it was over the first 50 games of the season. Which has been part of this slide that they've been on. So I actually don't mind Nelson Palmieri and Engvall, 6 to 7% ownership. And what I don't think is that brutal of a matchup. I'm not running out to play them as a filler stack, but I do think they are a filler stack you can put in with your Tampa Bays and your Edmontons and Colorados and all that. Question is what to do on the Philly side here. I don't suspect any of these Islanders lines are going to be very good defensively. Konechny, Couturier, and Forster actually did play together a lot earlier in the season, and they were pretty good together. 220 minutes at 5-on-5 for Konechny, Couturier, and Forster. 2.9 expected goals for, 1.7 expected goals against per 60. About the same goals for and actual goals for and against. So, they were driving the play and they were outscoring the opposition pretty well. Like Forster's quietly been one of the top rookies in the NHL this season. He's looked like a pretty good player, and we know how good Travis Konechny can be. I'm not worried about matchups on the side of the Islanders, and 4% ownership is perfectly fine for a line that's 14,500. I think the other big note here, I will say I don't have that much interest in Frost, Tippett, and Atkinson. Atkinson seems like if there's a line that I'm concerned is going to be broken up about 10 minutes into the game, it's Cam Atkinson getting thrown back down on the fourth line real quick. Like that's kind of what I think is going to happen. Maybe not this game. You never know what happens, but I think it's pretty likely. And then Joel Farabee gets moved back up. Either way, Jamie Drysdale coming back for the Flyers is kind of a big deal. It wasn't a big sample. He only had 40-some minutes at 5-on-4, like on the power play with the Flyers, but they had the most shots, most shot attempts, most expected goals, and most goals scored per minute with Drysdale running the top power play unit than any other defenseman, more than Zamula, more than York, more than Sanheim. If they can just be an average power play, it changes the DFS profiles of their top players like Travis Konechny and Owen Tippett quite a bit. So I kind of like Philly 1 here. The problem is like they're priced in that no man's land at 14,500, right? Like if you pair them with Tampa Bay, I don't even think that's doable, even with a $7,000 goalie off the top of my head, or else you're double punting your defenseman. So they're in one of those spots where unless you play them with like a Florida or a Toronto or something like that, I just don't see how you can fit them in. But I do like Philly 1 here in this matchup. Couturier, Forster, and Konechny. On the Islanders side, it'd be the Engvall line, but it's the Philly side that I just like best, generally speaking.
Yeah. Somehow this game has playoff implications, and it just sucks. If you're looking to finish out the NHL season through the playoffs, you can sign up using the link in the chat box to get access to the best NHL data and tools in the industry. You get player and ownership projections, top stacks tools, line combinations, and access to the premium Discord. We got, Frost back in there. He gives you his goalie. You just fade or you stack against and you make money. And I don't know. That pays for the price of admission. You know what I mean? Like he played, who did he play the other night?
It was Markstrom on Saturday, wasn't it?
No, he played Lindgren.
Oh, yeah.
No, but it was the game before that. His goalie gave up 2 goals on the first 3 shots. It's just unbelievable how he's running. It's insane. Like you would think by accident he would pick a good goalie once in a while. I've never if you take a statistics class in, high school or university, college or whatever, you'd be like, this guy is running insanely bad. And it's true. Like I haven't seen anyone run worse than Tyler. It's incredible, but we benefit because we stack against. So, the people in the Discord love him. Detroit. Oh God, Detroit. Detroit Red Wings, the 2.8 total heading into Tampa. The Lightning have a 3.6. 3.6, right? Colorado has a 4.1. The Tampa 1 is right around the same price. 17% top two stack, 4.7% projected ownership. This is one of those lines where it's a pivot off Colorado 1 in single entry. They have been excellent with Duclair there, offensively. Like, excellent. It's like 6 3/4 actual goals per 60, over 4.5 expected goals. Nothing on Detroit scares me defensively. They suck defensively. Their penalty kill isn't great. You get Kucherov and Point on the top power play unit. Duclair's on the second unit. That's fine. They do work 5-on-5. Like, they're probably going to see. It doesn't really matter who they're going to see. It just gets better as it goes down the lineup. So, like, this slate would be insane if Colorado wasn't on it, right? Because you had Edmonton, you have Toronto, you have Tampa. There would be split ownership all over the place. But Colorado, there's so much ownership. I really, really do like Tampa 1 here tonight. Tampa 2, for some reason, is coming in at 8.3% ownership at 16,100. Cirelli, Hagel, Stamkos. Like, we've been over it and over it and over it and over it. Like, a Stamkos one-off is fine here because he's on the top power play unit, and this is a pretty good power play spot. But, like, I don't think I'm going to full stack Cirelli, Hagel, and Stamkos. Like, it's a Stamkos problem, but he still can get there on the power play. So, Tampa 1 for me. Stamkos one-off is fine, or just add him into a power play stack. I see, like, we've noticed that Larkin, Kane, DeBrincat are back together. They're on different power play units. That line, like, I don't want to play them here tonight. Like, I'd much rather play Rangers 2 for $100 more. Even Pitt 1 for $200 more. But, like, they have a 2.8 total, and Tampa isn't that great defensively. They're probably around league average. So if you happen to get to some Larkin, Kane, DeBrincat, and MME, I think that's fine. But, like, I'm definitely not running out to play them in 3 max. That's really about it on the Detroit side. This is the Tampa 1 game for me.
Yeah, I mean, and I will say, as far as Detroit goes, they didn't have a morning skate today, or at least I didn't see anything posted on Twitter. And they've now lost 4 games in a row.
So who knows?
So who knows what the lineup is going to look like? We're assuming Kane, DeBrincat, and Larkin stay on the top line, but they can't keep giving away games because they've fallen out of a playoff. Like, they could just genuinely miss the playoffs after that first 40 or 50 games of the season or whatever they had. That top Detroit line has been very good offensively this season when they have been together. 125 minutes for Larkin, DeBrincat, and Kane. 2.9 expected goals for, 6.1 actual goals for. Now, obviously, 6.1 goals tells us that they have a very high shooting percentage together that is going to regress. But if you look at the amount of shots that they're just generating when they're on the ice, even if they shoot 10% rather than 17% or whatever it is, like, they're still well above average offensively. So I'm not that concerned about the Tampa Bay matchups. Like, you're right. Like, none of their lines have really been that great defensively. The problem is they're just kind of in that Pittsburgh 1 bin for me, where they're too expensive to play with Edmonton or Colorado, or Tampa Bay certainly. They're too expensive to play with those lines, and I'd rather play one of those lines in single entry and 3 max than I would rather play Detroit. But if I were 20 maxing, or certainly 150, I do have interest in Detroit. Like, even if they are split on the power play units, like you and I have talked about, it's actually something that's kind of worked for them this season. And Tampa Bay has a pretty good penalty kill anyway, or at least they have for a couple months now. So I'm not super concerned about the upside on the power play. I'm more concerned about the upside of 5-on-5, and they have a lot. It's just that they're priced in a spot where I wouldn't want to play them in a single entry or 3 max over Tampa Bay or over Edmonton or over Colorado. Like, that's just kind of the issue. Second and third lines for Detroit, I think Comfort, Raymond, and Perron's actually kind of fine. Like, I know Perron's had a pretty bad, like, the first half of the season for Perron was absolutely dreadful. He's still been somewhat productive. And Lucas Raymond, like he's been on a little bit of a cold streak here for a few games now, but he's generally been very productive as well. Raymond and Confer are both on the same power play unit. I think like that is a cheap stack that I think you can put in with the more expensive guys. But it is the Tampa Bay side that I do have a lot more interest in. You're right, like that top line with Duclair there, they're up over 70 minutes now. Like obviously that's still not a big sample, but it's starting to grow. 78 shot attempts, 4.7 expected goals, 5.9 actual goals per 60 minutes. The one thing I worry about is ice time. This is a team that has been cutting back their ice time on the top guys. Point and Kucherov have been closer to like 18, 19 minutes at times over the last couple of weeks. That is a bit of a concern when you're staring down Nathan McKinnon possibly playing like 26 minutes here tonight. You know what I mean? But they have been excellent with Duclair there. Braden Point, like I know a lot of the attention is going to Kucherov, and rightly so, but Braden Point has 17 goals in his last 20 games. Like this guy's been on an absolute nuclear hot streak of late. And I'm not worried about any of the matchups on the Detroit side. The best you can say is that some of their lines are average defensively. The worst that you can say is that this team sucks. I'm just not worried about any of the matchups from Detroit. Tampa Bay ranks as the number 3 line on the slate for me. It's just that there's so much firepower that I think there are reasons to play the other lines, but I really do like Tampa 1. It's funny, we slagged Tampa 2. We slagged them on Saturday, and then they went out and they got 3 goals and 3 assists as a line together. That happens, and it's not that I think they're a particularly good line, but it can happen when you're not playing great teams. I just think that there are other lines that I'd rather go to in that price range rather than Tampa. Like we'll talk about Florida in a second. Like we talked about the Rangers Zibanejad line. We'll get to Winnipeg in a second. We'll get to Toronto. Like I just think that there are other spots that I'd rather go to than go to Tampa 2 here. But I love Tampa 1. They're my number 3 line on the slate. I just think I like the teams that I have ahead of them a little bit better.
Yeah, I mean, like Tampa 2 is not going to have a bad game every game of the season. So from like a micro perspective, anything could happen on any slate. But long-term, fading them has been the play. So, like, you just have to find that one night where they do it. And that was the other slate. Florida Panthers with a 3.2 total heading into Toronto. The Leafs have a 2.9. Florida going back to Reinhart, Barkov, Verhaeghe, Kachuk, Bennett, Erod, Tarasenko, Lundell, Luosterainen. Toronto Lions status quo. This is interesting because Florida 1 is 20,400, coming in at 2% ownership. They're fully correlated against a pooper's penalty kill. Like the Leafs, you can say whatever you want about the Leafs. They suck defensively. They have a bad penalty kill. Austin Matthews is having an otherworldly season, and he is just single-handedly carrying this team. But he can't help them defensively because he plays with Black Hole Domi. So, like, Barkov is going to see a whole bunch of Matthews here tonight. Maybe he sees a bunch of Tavares, but like neither of those lines concern me defensively. It might be more Tavares than Matthews because they try to keep Matthews and Domi away from the top comp. Doesn't really matter. Tavares, Nylander, McMahon, nothing to be feared defensively. 2% ownership on fully correlated Florida 1. This is another one of those lines where if we're fading Colorado, I really like this line. They've had a big sample of doing well together. This is a good power play spot. Yeah, Reinhardt shooting like 9 million% on the season, but he's kept it up all season pretty much. So I'm in on Florida 1. You want to go to Florida 2? I think that's fine. I definitely prefer Florida 1 here. I think, Kachuk's a fine one-off. I want the power play guys in this spot. On the flip side, I know Matthews, Bertuzzi, Domi, it's not the best matchup, but 7% ownership at 18-3 is a bit intriguing because their offensive numbers have been what you would expect from a Matthews-Domi line. Very, very good. And Bertuzzi's not going to kill you there. He's a good offensive player. So I don't know if I prioritize them in 1 to 3. I much prefer Florida 1. But it's another question going into 20 to 150 max. Like, this is a line I'd probably be over the field on. Toronto 2, I'm not as high on. I'd rather play Florida 1 at 20,400 than Toronto 2 at 20,000, despite Toronto 2 having a higher top 2 stack percentage. I just prefer Florida 1. You can play them. It's another MME thing, but I think I think Florida 1 is legitimately in the conversation in my single entry if I fade Colorado 1.
Yeah, I agree. They're not a top 3 line for me, but they are in the they would be they're firmly in the conversation of the non-Colorado teams. That Florida top line has played about 200 minutes together this season, 3.5 expected goals for, 1.5 expected goals against per 60. Like, they just absolutely throttle the opposition, which is why I'm interested to see how Toronto does run the matchups here tonight, because they do use the Matthews line still in shutdown matchups. They just kind of split the time with Tavares. That doesn't really help us, but this is kind of the reason why I'm not super into Toronto here tonight, is that, let's say Matthews plays 30% to 40% of his shifts against the Barkov line. It seems pretty unlikely he's going to score in those minutes. Florida does take a lot of penalties. In fact, over the last 6 weeks, Florida's at 5.3 minor penalties taken per game. The league average is 3.3, and only one other team is over 4, let alone 5. Florida does take a lot of penalties, but we talked about on Saturday how Toronto's power play hasn't really been that good without Morgan Rielly or Timothy Liljegren running things on the blue line, and they went 0-for-4 against the Sabres with Connor Timmins running things. So, I don't think this is necessarily a great power play match. Like, if Rielly was playing, he's not. He skated this morning, but he's not playing. If Rielly was playing, I would have a lot of interest in one of the Toronto lines, but I don't think the power play upside is as high with Timmins running things as Rielly or even Liljegren. And if you don't have the power play upside, and all of a sudden a third of your even strength ice time or half your even strength ice time is against a Barkov line that just absolutely pounds the piss out of the opponents, it's like, what exactly are you stacking them for? So I'm not really keen on playing Toronto. I think I'm with you. I'd play the Matthews line, Matthews, Bertuzzi, Domi. They have been really good in a small sample, 4.8 expected goals per 60. What I worry about is, one, that power play upside that I don't think is there. And two, Bertuzzi's been on a hot streak, 11 goals in his last 16 games. He's shooting 33%. Like, he has 18 shots in his last 10 games. He's under 2 shots per game. He's just finishing at an absolutely preposterous rate. Like, half of that rate would be high for him. You know what I mean? So, like, I worry that they're just going to come crashing down eventually. And against a really good defensive team like Florida, it seems plausible. So I'm out on Toronto. I'm in on Florida. And you're right. Like, there's not that much ownership coming in on them. 2% on that Florida line, 9.1% top 2 stack percentage. I'm not worried about any of the matchups against Toronto. I do think Toronto has 2 pretty good offensive lines, but I'm not worried about them defensively like I would be against the Barkov line. They're perfectly correlated on the power play. For as many penalties as Florida takes, they also draw a lot. They're at 4.2 minor penalties drawn per game over the last 6 weeks. That's the most in the league. They're at 4.2. No other teams above 3.8. So, like, they're pretty comfortably drawing the most minor penalties per game. Toronto's power play has not been good basically for at least 2 months now, like a third of the season. And whether that gets any better tonight, I guess we'll see. But Florida's generally had a very good power play. It's one thing that's carried their offense. So I kind of think Florida 1 is the only line I like in this game. Florida 3 is a little interesting with Tarasenko down with Lundell and Luostarinen. Like, he's not very good defensively, but he's still pretty good offensively, and I'm not worried about bottom 6 matchups for Toronto. They are really, really cheap. They're a line that you can stack with Colorado. They're not my favorite depth line on this match, but I think Florida 3, especially if you're playing 20 max or 150 max or something, is something that's playable. But it's Florida 1 I like best in this game, and it's not particularly close.
Yeah, I agree. I'm surprised their top 2 stack percentage is that low. I don't know. Who knows? Maybe I'm just an idiot. Edmonton Oilers, they 3.5 total. Heading into St. Louis, the Blues have a 2.6 total. We have Edmonton 1, McDavid, Hyman, Nugent, Hopkins, 23-1, 22.2% top 2 stack, 4.9% projected ownership. They're the highest positively leveraged line on the slate. I haven't seen your numbers, but I imagine they're in your 2 spot for your stacks. This would be the pivot for me if I'm not playing Colorado. Like, the issue that I have is, one, the Blues don't take a ton of penalties. Edmonton doesn't draw a ton of power plays either. But, like, these lines are just so ugly that McDavid, Hyman, Nugent Hopkins may not even need 2 power plays. You know what I mean? Like, they can run this team over 5-on-5. And I was like, you know what? Do they have something to play for? And they kind of do, right? They're only 6 points back of Vancouver for that top spot with 2 games in hand. So it's not like they're going to be coasting. Like, they probably want that top spot. You know what I mean? So, like, they're going to get their minutes here tonight. You don't have to worry about that. 5% on that line, fully correlated. If they happen to get 3 power plays here tonight, they can easily get a goal. You know what I mean? So this is the pivot for me. Obviously, Florida one's there, Tampa one's there, but at the top of my pivot board, I don't have a pivot board, but if I'm not playing Colorado 1, I think the number 1 stack I would put in is Edmonton 1. Now, Edmonton 2 is a bit interesting. Draisaitl, Henrique, Fogle, 6.6%, but they're 14-4, right? And none of these Blues lines are good. Like, so I don't mind Draisaitl, Henrique, Fogle as a filler. You know what I mean? Because, like, Draisaitl, Fogle have good numbers offensively this season. You throw, Henrique into the mix. He's not a world beater, but, like, he's not going to hurt you. So, like, I don't mind Edmonton 2 as a filler. I just, if Colorado wasn't on this slate, this would be the line I was playing. And on the Blues side, like, these lines are just brutal, man. Like, they're so bad. I don't want to play them because Edmonton has a pretty good penalty kill. And, like, the only thing I would consider is some sort of power play stack, but, like, that's just not a good spot for it tonight. So I'm out on the Blues.
Yeah, I'm kind of fine with playing Thomas, Neighbors, and Saad here. One, because at 13-8, they are aligned. Like, you can play them with Florida or you can play them with Tampa. You know what I mean? Like, they're cheap enough to do that. And then, you still have to double punt your defenseman, but they're cheap enough that you can play them with this one of the expensive stacks. And the other thing is, like, Thomas and Neighbors actually have been fine together this season.
Yeah.
3.2 expected goals, 2.9 actual goals per 60. 2 out of the 3 guys are on the top power play unit. Brandon Saad, like we talked about it on Saturday, Brandon Saad has 24 goals this season. Like, I know he's doing is shooting 18 or 19% or whatever it is. But even still, he would probably have a 20-goal season. So it's not like he's just an empty body on the other side. I don't mind St. Louis 1 just because they're cheap enough to fit in with the expensive stacks, but it's certainly not a line that I'm targeting. It is the Edmonton side that I like. Edmonton 1 is my number 2. Is my number 2 stack on the slate. Like, there's just no matchup concerns on the St. Louis side. Like, as good as Thomas and Neighbors have been offensively together, when it's not Thomas, Kyrou, and Buchnevich, all the lines get worse defensively. Like, that's just kind of how it works. They really need Jordan Binnington to kind of stand on his head here tonight, and he's done it a lot this season. Don't get me wrong, but I'll always bet against a goalie having to have an exceptional performance, especially when you're facing the Edmonton Oilers. The Edmonton top line in the month of March, 85 shot attempts per 60 minutes, 4.4 goals, expected goals per 60 minutes. Zach Hyman, 19 goals and over 4 shots per game in his last 20 games. St. Louis, they don't take a ton of penalties. Edmonton has been starting to draw more power plays over the last month as compared to, like, January and February. There's just not a lot of matchup concerns. I think Edmonton 1 is the pivot away from Colorado if you don't want to play them. Like, they're coming in at 22.2% top 2 stack. Like there is a good chance. There is a good chance that they end up one of the as a top stack here tonight. So I really do like Edmonton 1. I don't think I would dip down to the depth. Like, I wouldn't go play Draisaitl, Henry, and Fogle. I'm not against it per se. I just think I'd want to get in that perfectly correlates Edmonton top line. So Edmonton 1, St. Louis 1 for me in this game.
Yeah, I just went and looked while you were talking about Bennington's season. He's 7th in the NHL with for goals saved above expected. He's actually had a very good season. So he is due for a meltdown though. Punch a referee or something. I don't know. It might not be tonight, but he's due. LA Kings with a 2.6 total heading into Winnipeg. The Jets have a 2.8. This is a actual good hockey game, miserable for DFS. This is like, they're probably the two best defensive teams in the West. They're going Scheifele, Velarde, Ehlers, and then Connor, Monahan, Perfidi if Toffoli's out. Whatchamacallit, we don't really know Kings lines, and Phil Deneau is the coach said he's 50-50, and they completely shuffled them the last game. I think it was, what was it? I don't even know. It was like Kempe, Kopitar, Arvidsson, and then Byfield, Dubois, and I don't know. Like, we honestly don't know the lines.
Well, they put Byfield back on the top line and move Arvidsson next to Moore. Moore and Dubois is what they did. Now, we're assuming those are the lines, but if Deneau plays, it changes everything. So, like,
I mean, like you said to me before the show, luckily this isn't a very good matchup, and I'm certainly not targeting either side in single entry. And even in MME, I would be low owned on this game with the uncertainty of the LA lines. Like, it just brings me lower on them. Winnipeg, I don't mind Scheifele, Velarde, Ehlers. They're cheap enough in MME where you can fit them with some good stuff. It would probably be that line from this game. It's just like, I am not prioritizing this game at all. It's a 5.5 total, two really good defensive teams, and we have so much firepower on the slate.
Yeah, I don't have any interest really in playing Los Angeles. Like, if you want to play the Kings top line with Byfield there, like, I think that's fine. And, if something comes up where the lines are completely different for whatever reason, you're probably going to have enough salary to play whatever the lines are, because none of their players are all that expensive. So maybe Kings 1, but no, I don't really have any interest in Los Angeles here. The Winnipeg side is a little bit more interesting to me because Nikolai Ehlers and Mark Scheifele actually have pretty good numbers together this season without Kyle Connor. They have 225 minutes played without Kyle Connor, 3.5 expected goals for, 4.6 actual goals for per 60 minutes. A lot of those minutes were with Gabriel Velarde, and the offense was really good with Gabriel Velarde. Now, they're not going to be probably not going to be perfectly correlated on the power play. But, the Kings typically have had a pretty good penalty kill. The penalty kill has started to slide of late. And the thing with the Kings is, like, their penalty kill have been really good because the goaltending was really good. It's kind of like, as the goaltending's gone, so is the PK. With the goaltending on the PK taking a slide, that penalty kill has gotten worse. Not to say that Winnipeg's power play has been tremendous or anything, but I think it is a penalty kill that can kind of be had. And the Kings have been taking penalties. They're at 3.6 minor penalties taken per game over the last 6 weeks. That is 6th most in the league and 3rd most on this slate. So they have been taking penalties. Jets haven't really been drawing a lot of power plays, but, they go 1 for 3 for a Winnipeg line that's only 16,300. You're kind of in business. I don't think I'm playing them personally because I do have a lot more interest in playing like a Colorado or Tampa Bay or a Florida or something like that, or Edmonton, obviously. But if I was 20 maxing or something, I would probably be considering that Scheifele, Velarde, Ehlers line. They've been really, really good this season. It's not a good matchup against Los Angeles. It's why you're seeing low totals and all that. But in the off chance that the big guns don't go off here tonight, I think having, if you're playing a lot of lineups, having some Scheifele, Velarde, Ehlers is merited. But otherwise, I really don't have a lot of interest in this game.
Yeah, me either. And now, team playing the Sharks with a min-price center on the first line. Shane Wright's going to be centering Jaden Schwartz and Jordan Eberle, they said. Seattle Kraken with a 3.2 total heading into San Jose. The Sharks have a 2.3. Seattle is skating right now. The only line that they've said is Shane Wright is with Jaden Schwartz and Jordan Eberle. Let me do some quick math here. Let me slide that over. Shane Wright with Eberle. And
it's like a $10,000 line.
Yeah, so they're 10,300 against the Sharks. That's probably going to be your chalk with Colorado 1. Is Shane Wright good? He was supposed to be the number 1 pick. He's struggled in the NHL. He had a pretty good juniors, didn't he, recently?
Well, he had a decent AHL season. He had 43 points in 60 games. I forget what it is off the top of my head. But he had 20 goals and 43 points, 55, 60 games, whatever it was.
I mean, the issue last year when he was up, he was playing 9 minutes on the 4th line. So he actually has some line mates here. I'll probably still only play 12, 13 minutes, but it's actually doable at that price. I would imagine Bjorkstrand, Beniers, and Tolvanen sticks together at 12-7. I do want to see a new run with that line. I don't know where McCann goes, so actually the lines may be different.
That's what I was thinking. I think you're going to see McCann, Beniers, maybe Bjorkstrand, maybe Tolvanen, and then one of Bjorkstrand or Tolvanen goes back down to the 3rd line.
With Burakovsky, yeah. So, as it stands, the only known is 10,300 against the Sharks with, 1,000,000% top 2 sack Colorado. Vinny Dunn's a game time decision. That's interesting because that will give a nice boost to their power play. Not that you need a giant boost on the power play against the Sharks, but their power play isn't worth a damn without Vinny Dunn. It still sucks with Dunn, but it's miserable without him. So I don't know, man. This is easily going to be the chalk with Colorado. Don't exactly know the units with Wright in. Maybe they run them after we get off the air. I don't know. But any team against the Sharks is in play. It sucks that it's Seattle, and it sucks that they fit with Colorado. But what are you going to do? I'm out on the Sharks.
Yeah, the tough thing with Seattle is like you said, that line's 10,300. If they do go to Bjorkstrand, Beniers, McCann, that's 14,000 and change.
You can't fit them.
And you can't fit them, right? So then maybe you play a Burakovsky, Tolvanen, Gord line. That would kind of be in play, I guess. And I assume it'd be a low on combination, but the problem is we're guessing that that's what the line combination is going to be, and we won't know, especially with this game starting at 10:30 Eastern. We won't have any indication until warmups, and every other game is going to be locked by then. So you kind of have to figure it out. The nice thing is, I guess, is that with the fact that they're playing San Jose means that there's a lot of cheap players on the other side too. So you can probably figure out some sort of stack if you don't have the right combination. I'm not super keen on playing Shane Wright. I don't think he's particularly looked good in his NHL time. I think line mates is part of it. He was spending a lot of time down on the 4th line. Now he has actual line mates. I'm worried about ownership. I would honestly probably rather take a stab on a Burakovsky, Tolvanen, Gord line or something like that. Because I don't think that they would necessarily, the 3 of them together, would necessarily carry a lot of ownership. Because we don't know what the line is going to be unless we, see something here shortly. That would probably be what I'd have the most interest in because, a McCann, Beniers, Bjorkstrand line or McCann, Beniers, Eberle or whatever, not Eberle, but Beniers with Tolvanen, sorry, McCann, Beniers, Tolvanen would be just a little bit too expensive to play with the lines that I've focused on elsewhere. So it would probably be Seattle 3. I just hope we actually get confirmation on what Seattle 3 is before the slate locks. I'm not sure we will. On the San Jose side, Sturm and Bordeleau have been pretty good, eh?
They have, but it's
they're up over 100 minutes together. 82 shot attempts, 2.9 expected goals per 60 minutes. Now, they're not scoring a lot. Seattle's penalty kill's been kind of falling a little bit. You get Bordelot on the top power play. I kind of think San Jose 3, because they're not expensive, right? Like,
Yeah,
obviously,
they're free. They're free.
the third line for the San Jose Sharks. They're not that expensive. It sucks that Mike Hoffman is probably going to be on a line with them. But, a Bordelot Sturm 2-man or something like that to go with your expensive Colorado or your expensive Tampa Bay or your expensive Edmonton, I think that's in play. It is the Seattle side that I like best. We just don't have confirmation on what the second and third lines are going to be.
Jake's foaming at the mouth that you mentioned Bordelot. He has used all his wrong good this season on Bordelot, but yeah. They could just move him up the lineup, but never mind. Like, I don't want to talk about the Sharks anymore. Coming up after us at 5 p.m. MLB Live before lock with Greg Ehrenberg and Matt Bellman. 6 p.m. NBA Live before lock with Josh Engelman and Eric Lindquist, and the 7 p.m. playback live watch along show. That's a fun one. I hope they get that for UFC. It'll be fun, but I don't know. Maybe not, because then that would require me to stay up later, and I can't even make it past 10 p.m. anymore. I'm just too old. Let's talk about some defensemen here. Cale Makar, top of the board, 8,200. That's an obvious target. Like, even if you want to fade Colorado one, like in single entry, I think, playing Makar at least get you some exposure to that kid. I don't know what Makar's ownership is going to be, because I don't know if you can full power play stack Colorado. I don't even know if you can. I mean, you can do Colorado one Makar. It just gets really feisty, but that 10-3 Seattle line might make it viable. I don't know. But like, I think Makar is going to be higher owned than Drouin and Middlestat. I don't know if he's going to be as high as Rantanen and McKinnon here tonight. After that, Hedman's in a decent spot. I like Adam Fox, but there really isn't too much in that top range that I love. I'm probably going to be looking for mid-range and punts. Who you liking?
Yeah, Werenski, Makar are at the top. I don't mind Evan Bouchard. I don't think it's particularly a good power play spot, but I don't mind Evan Bouchard. Victor Hedman, obviously. Werenski, Makar, and Hedman are my 1, 2, 3. Mid-price, it's Fox and Montour, kind of in a little bit of a tier of their own. I had Cam York, but with Jamie Drysdale back, I would probably prefer to play Drysdale here. It's only $3K on DraftKings. York is up at 4,700. Now, Drysdale needs points. He's not a big peripheral guy, but at $3K, like an assist in a few shots, and you're fine. Also noticed Jacob Trouba's price is pretty cheap. It might be a high-paced matchup, and he's only 4,900 on DK. I don't mind Trouba. For cheaper defensemen, Adam Pelech for the Islanders. Sam Girard, I think it was fine, but with Sean Walker back, I kind of like Walker a little bit more. He jumps into the play a little bit more for Colorado. Kyle Burrows for San Jose. He's been getting 20 to 21 minutes a game. It's not bad for 3,100, but I'm not targeting him specifically. There are a lot of cheap defensemen that I like punty type. Simon Edvinsson, 2,500 for Detroit. Nico Mikkola has been regularly playing 20 minutes a game, even with Aaron Ekblad back. He's cheap for Florida, 2,800. Connor Timmins still only 2,800 for Toronto. He's still power play one. What can you do about that? Riker Evans played a lot of minutes last game for Seattle. With Vince Dunn possibly coming back, I'm not as high on him. And the problem is like, if Vince Dunn's back, there's really no like mid-price swap that you can go to in that game. So if you do play Evans, you might get kind of stuck playing a number 6 or number 7 defenseman that doesn't get a lot of ice time if Dunn comes back.
Yeah, agreed there. That is an interesting slate. Let's talk about some goalies. I would imagine that the cheaper goalies are going to be more popular here tonight, just based off the top end talent on the slate. Justice Newman at the top of the board, 8,500. Not really interested there. My spend up option would be, Shesterkin. Whoever starts for Seattle, I think is more of a cashy type play. I do like Shesterkin. I mean, honestly, I don't love the goalies here tonight. I think Blackwood's fine at 7K, but Bob would be another one at 7,900. But I don't really love the goalies here tonight more than usual. I hate the goalies every slate, but Stewie Skinner. Like, I want to play a cheaper goalie just to save the salary, but I prefer the mid to higher range guys here tonight.
Yeah, Brossois and Igor are at the top for me, especially Brossois under 8K at home against the Kings. I don't mind Varlamov here at 7,600. I'm still not that concerned about Philly's power play, and the Islanders have been giving up a few more shots, so I don't mind Varlamov. I think Blackwood would be the cheap goalie to go to. I'm not that worried about Seattle. And if Seattle does pile up the shots, I'm not that worried about them scoring 6 goals. I feel like, famous last words and all that, but I don't mind Blackwood coming off that shutout against St. Louis at 7K here tonight on DraftKings.
Now the interesting stuff is your hat trick pick.
I'm going to go with a guy that's kind of chalky, but one that doesn't shoot a lot. I'm going to go with Casey Middlestat.
Colorado, but not on the top line. That would be interesting, especially if you fade. I'm going – let me see here. Because, let me see. Because he's been in a slump. Not really. I mean, he's only had 3 goals in his past, 12 games, something like that. Going Carter Verhaeghe.
I like it. Let's go Panthers.
Yes. We will be back tomorrow. We have mid-range size slates all week. So we will be back tomorrow. Hopefully you have a easy time deciding what you want to do with Colorado. Hopefully you're at peace if you fade them and you're dead within 7 minutes. If you play them, get a little bit different. Good luck, everybody, and we'll see you tomorrow.
Good luck tonight, everyone.